I have seen men speak about themselves more than they ever worked on themselves. I have seen them recount victories that did not make them better, and wounds they never truly healed. And do you know what I learned while ruling an empire? That the man who feels the need to constantly explain himself is searching for something he cannot find within. He speaks of his successes to secure them, because he fears they will vanish without the gaze of others. He speaks of his troubles to lighten them, because he has not yet learned how to carry them alone. But in doing so, he hands his worth over to an unstable court, the opinion of others. I watch senators measure themselves by applause, generals tremble at a single dissenting voice, powerful men become fragile the very moment they sought approval. And then I understood this. When a man speaks too much about himself, he is not communicating. He is asking permission to exist. But a life that needs to be explained is not yet firmly grounded. The problem is not speech. It is where it comes from. If it comes from virtue, it is restrained. If it comes from emptiness, it is loud. So I tell you this. Before asking, "What do they think of me?" ask instead, "Who am I trying to convince?" Because as long as your worth depends on an external answer, you are not master of yourself. I learned this by watching powerful men fall into silence. But there is one who learned this truth without power, without honors, with nothing to lose. A man who could not afford illusions. Now listen to Epictetus. For if I observed this weakness from the height of the throne, he exposed it from the weight of chains. And his words offer no comfort to anyone.
Listen. If you speak constantly about yourself, it is not because you have much to say. It is because you cannot remain with yourself in silence. You say, "I speak so I may be understood." But in truth, you speak so you may be confirmed. I was a slave, and I knew well what it meant to count for nothing in the eyes of others. Had I sought my worth there, I would have remained a slave forever. The man who speaks endlessly about himself has already made a dangerous decision, that his value depends on those who listen. And so every word becomes a wager, every silence a threat, every lack of reaction a wound. Tell me, if your worth were solid, would you truly need to display it? You suffer because you confuse two things, who you are and what others think of you. But the judgment of others does not belong to you. You do not control it. You cannot hold it. Yet you hand over your peace to it. This is modern slavery. Not chains on the wrists, but assent given without examination. Every time you feel the urge to speak about yourself, stop and ask, does this depend on me? Or am I seeking something outside myself? If it depends on you, act in silence. If it does not, remain silent and let it go. Because the free man does not need to constantly explain himself. He does what is right and allows the noise to pass. The silence of a disciplined man weighs more than 1,000 stories. Marcus showed you where the problem is born. I have shown you where you surrender command. Now one more question remains, more subtle. How does one live each day without falling back into this trap? How does one keep measure without becoming hard or isolated? For this, now listen to Seneca. He will not speak to you as a judge, but as a man who has erred, observed, and learned. And what he will say is for tomorrow morning, not only for today.
My friend, you have listened to Marcus. You have listened to Epictetus. One showed you where you lose your freedom, the other showed you the moment you give it away. Now allow me to speak to you man to man. The need to speak about oneself does not always come from vanity. Often it comes from weariness, from the fear of no longer mattering, from the anxiety of being forgotten, from the desire to hear, if only for a moment, "You have value. I see you." I have felt this too. I have spoken when silence would have been enough, not to deceive others, but to reassure myself. And this is what I learned. The man who speaks too much about himself is seeking outside what he does not cultivate within. You do not need to become cold. You do not need to withdraw from others. What you need is measure. Speak when your words serve a purpose. Be silent when they serve only to soothe a void. Before speaking of yourself, ask, am I sharing or am I seeking confirmation? The first connects. The second consumes. Remember this, the man who is solid within does not rush to display himself. The hardest esteem to earn is not that of others, it is your own. And it is born in silence when you do what is right, even if no one applauds, even if no one is listening. Marcus spoke to you of freedom. Epictetus spoke to you of discipline. I leave you with this simple thought. Learn to be with yourself without needing to explain yourself. When you can do this, the words you speak to others will be few, but true, and they will be enough.